think we're live.
Trevor.
Hey, how's it going, Josh?
Pretty good. Welcome back to the Beat the Odds at Business Wealth podcast. Special episode today.
Special episode. All right. What do we got going on today?
We have the shocking mortgage updates.
Shocking. Yes.
Shocking mortgage updates. And I say this because I make fun of a lot of other, they call them the finfluencers. And I had a laugh the other day because someone called me a finfluencer on Instagram. It's like
finfluencer. Wow, I've never heard. That's a new one for me.
I owned an accounting firm for a decade before I had an Instagram account. So I'm not sure if I'm a finfluencer. If I'm supposed to be making money from this YouTube channel, I was like, I think I'm doing it wrong because I make my money from from the accounting practice. But you know what I usually see is a lot of the advice out there. It's like it has this like headline. It's like the Canadian economy is about to crash, right?
Dun, dun,
why
dun.
your job is going to be eliminated. It's like, why the U.S. dollar falls tomorrow, right? It's always, and I usually this is the podcast where you come to and it's like, it's actually not that bad. And all the changes that you're going to see, they're going to happen much slower than you think, and that's usually the answer. And we tell people how to put it practically into use, right? Because we all expect that Lehman Brothers blow up moment, right? But for the most part, that's not how the world operates. Does it happen once in a while? Yes, but if you expect that to happen every day or every week or every month or even every year, you're going to make the wrong financial choices.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think with the way social media is going and the number of fear porn articles and rage porn stuff that's going on out there, helping people to get angry at government, angry at policies, angry at this and that, and they're just trying to find something to occupy their mind as well as someone to blame for their situation and circumstances. And it's not a healthy place to be, and we're just inundated with these headlines and articles and newscasts and these finfluencers who are just putting out all this negative information. And I think it's doing something to our human psyche.
Yeah. So I mean, and so when I say when I post the title this time, shocking. It actually is.
Yeah, this one's weird.
There's very few things that are like shocking. It's usually like little changes, and we tell people how to navigate and how do they actually use these strategies to build wealth in Canada. How do you get into the top 20%? How do you get in the top 1%? Right? But this is a game changer. Like I haven't had a piece of news come across my desk like this until since October 13th last year. So we're very close. October 13th last year, when the United States Securities and Exchange Commission did not file their appeal rights for Bitcoin, for the spot Bitcoin ETF, right?
Yeah.
And you remember me talking about it that day, and I was like, I'm buying a whole pile of Bitcoin, right? Because it was a gimme, like it was a layup, right? Like you knew that Bitcoin ETF in October was going to get approved because they didn't, it didn't get announced. It wasn't talked about a lot, but the Securities and Exchange Commission didn't appeal the Grayscale court case. Their 45 days expired on October 13th, and it was a gimme. Buying Bitcoin at 40,000 Canadian on that day was a gimme, right?
Yeah. This announcement isn't the same as them approving the spot ETF in the United States, but it's pretty big.
It's pretty big. It's not going to be as easy as the Bitcoin play, right? Yeah. But it's a very exciting play. There's a lot of opportunity in it and a lot of potential missteps. And we talk in Canada about losing your principal gains, your principal residence deduction. So having to pay tax if you sell your primary residence. And these new mortgage rules, I can see them pointing people in the direction where they are going to inadvertently trigger tax on the principal residence. And if you stick around in this podcast, I'll explain why, right? But let's break into it. Okay, so I just want to show here, like if you type this into Google, Government of Canada mortgage updates, okay? And I just type in the updates, just like that. You're going to see the boldest mortgage reforms in decades on the Government of Canada website. So even the Government of Canada website is getting into the taglines now.
Man,
Yeah.
They're up in their game.
This
Well,
is straight.
now that they got issues with the CBC, you know,
Yeah.
not being the main broadcaster in Canada, they have to take it upon themselves. Or maybe
right.
that's where their jobs are going. I'm not sure.
And I'll take you to this announcement. This is the announcement in September. This is not the one we're talking about, but I want people to be able to differentiate between the two. And so this is where they, you know, raise the cap on insured mortgages from 1 million to 1.5 million. So previously, you know, 5% down on the first 500,000, 10% down between 500,000 and a million. After a million, you get it into after a million, 1.1 million, 1.5 million. You're going to put 20% down minimum.
That's right. That's the minimum you'd have to put down. So, I mean, it was inevitable that
Yeah.
we were going to have to change that.
And, you know, I've probably said this before. I just think it's ridiculous whenever governments come out with these limits that aren't indexed to inflation. It's just, it's ridiculous. Even if you index it to the fake CPI numbers, like, come on, index it to something, because basically it's, you know, it's, you know, 2% less, 6% less, you know, 1 year from now. So like, why they don't just put these things, why there isn't just a blanket law saying all of these limits are automatically indexed to inflation every year is beyond me, but it's a whole different discussion. But anyways.
And I mean, depending on where you are in Canada, $1 million home in Vancouver or in GTA isn't the same as $1 million home in Alberta or rural Saskatchewan.
That's right. That's right. You're living in the castle in Manitoba, right? So, okay. So,
McMansion.
So we got the, you know, 1 million to 1.5 million. That's you know, that was a change and amortized over 30 years. Okay, it's a change. You know, and some people say, well, you know, it's not the right thing to do because, you know, we don't need more debt. I hear you. This wasn't a dramatic change though, because 30-year mortgages are pretty much the norm south of the border. So, I mean, in terms of change, it's like, I agree, it's not really fixing the root problem, but you know, the 25-year mortgage was pretty restrictive. But anyways, this is a very small change compared to the one that came out 3 days ago. Okay. And the one that came out 3 days ago, you know, it's not titled. You actually are going to have a little bit of trouble searching it. So if you're going to search it, you're probably going to have to type in Government of Canada mortgage updates and put October after it. Okay. And I encourage people to actually read the government website on this one, because you're going to see a lot of stuff online and they might be speculating. All we know right now is what's on these pages. That's it. There is no other official information other than that. Anything more than that is speculation. Okay. And so you see this one 3 days ago. Mortgage insurance rule changes to enable. So just look at the title on that one compared to this one. It's like the boldest mortgage reforms in decades, going to 30 years.
That's a voting headline.
That's right. Yeah. And the other one is, you know, just quiet. Mortgage insurance rule changes to enable. What is this? These are the shocking changes. These are the shocking changes. Okay. So what's happening, and, you know, they're talking about many homeowners have extra space. They may want to convert into rental suites, such as unused basement or a garage that could be converted into a laneway home. Historically, the cost of renovating combined with municipal red tape has made this both difficult and expensive. Okay. This is true. People who attended our boot camp, people who have been our clients, it's like, we always tell them, like, one of the best investments you'll do is a secondary suite. Mm-hmm. Like it's historically one of the best investments you'll do in Canada is a secondary suite. And it's not easy to do, right? Because, you know, coming up with another $75,000 or $100,000 to put a basement suite in, or, you know, $200,000 or $300,000 to put a laneway home in, like, that's a big undertaking after someone has actually, you know, put the money down for the house. Mm-hmm. So usually they're kind of broke after they put that money out, right? Yeah. That's what happens. So it's a while before they build some equity up and they can make that change. And, you know, we teach people how to, you know, get rich for sure rather than get rich quick. And it's a strategy we've been working towards, but it's usually something that we plan, you know, it's like 5, 10, 15 years, like we're working towards these things, right? But now what's going to happen here is, like, the changes that they're talking about is they're going to allow insured mortgages up to the as improved value. So not the current value, which is what we had to work with before. Someone wanted to extract money, for the house, it's like maybe you get 10% for improvements, maybe, right? Maybe you get 10% for improvements, but usually a lot of times you're working with existing equity on the house. And if you have 5 or 10% down, good luck, right?
Right.
Good luck on getting that financing. But now these are going to be CMHC approved mortgages for the as improved values. So I would anticipate that that's going to be, the as improved, just like someone building a new house. They're going to get an appraiser in and say what it's going to be worth after, and that's what they're going to lend on. And now they're going to have a maximum loan to value up to 90% of the as improved value, up to $2 million. $2 million. So
Wow.
like this is like a massive, massive change. So imagine that person who buys, the new homeowner who buys a $500,000 or $1 million house. All of a sudden, immediately, they're going to try to become an amateur developer, and they're going to try to, add suites to the house. And if you keep going down on the document, it talks about 4 units, I believe. So they're going to allow people up to 4 units. Okay, that's a problem here.
Yeah, right there.
Right here. Maximum of 4 dwelling units, including the existing unit, and this has to be a property that you or a relative lives in. Okay, close relative. What do they mean by close relative yet? Don't know yet. It just says close relatives. Okay. Okay. So just because they're changing the mortgage rules, though, that does not mean that they're changing the Income Tax Act. Okay. So you have a classic example. You have someone with a principal residence and they add a basement suite or a laneway home. Okay. You add that basement suite or laneway home, and now you have rental income coming in. Okay. But the primary purpose of that house is still for you to live in.
Yes.
Okay. Because that, in order for you to sell your house tax-free someday, the primary purpose of that has to be a house that you ordinarily inhabited. And if you don't know what that, it's a pretty vague example. You need specific advice for your situation. That not necessarily the place where you live the most, but a place that you quote unquote ordinarily inhabit. Very broad definition. So there's some risk there in applying that terminology for a residence that it was primarily used for you. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's pretend you knock over the 80-year-old home on the 50-foot lot that you bought, and you build a 4-plex because they gave you this loan. Okay. If you do that, now all of a sudden you're occupying 1 unit and renting out 3. You are going to get slaughtered when you try to say that is your principal residence, that the primary purpose of that was your principal residence, because maybe they're 4,000 square foot units and you're occupying 1,000 of the 4,000 square feet, 25%, and you've been writing off 75% of the expenses related to that house, right? So those usually are the 2 parameters that we start looking at. There's always risk with this, and people need to get advice specific to their situation. But usually, we start looking at, well, how many square feet is being rented out, and how many square feet are you occupying? Okay, pretty easy in a basement suite where they're going to be occupying way less than 50%. The basement suite is going to be way less than 50% of the square footage of the house, especially if there's an upstairs. It's dramatically less, right? Mm-hmm. And in terms of the expenses writing off, we've always applied where 49% is kind of a hard limit, that we'd be very concerned to go over 49% for any extended period of time. But usually we like to play a little safer and just say a third. And so but that's a big deal. Historically, mm-hmm. You get someone with a basement suite, and they're writing off a third of their mortgage interest, a third of their property taxes, a third of the utilities, a third of their repairs in perpetuity while they live in that house. That's why people don't understand the tax benefit of having a suite in your principal residence. It's a massive, massive tax benefit. Okay. But, we usually get really concerned when we're writing off more than a third of those expenses, right? And certainly, it's this kind of do not pass go at more than 49%. So the person who conducts the 4-unit suite, they're going to have, who constructs the 4-unit suite, they're going to have a tax problem where they might be giving up their principal residence exemption. And that might be fine if they have other real estate plays, right? Maybe this place wasn't designed to be their principal residence, but people need to be very, very aware with this, that this is not changing the Income Tax Act. It is only changing your ability to get the mortgage, right? And so I think you're going to see is there might be a bit of a sweet spot expanding, where historically we've told people it's like one suite is kind of the ideal usually on a principal residence, because more than one suite in a lot of situations, it becomes a bit of a difficult asset to sell if you have to sell it. Because the person trying to qualify for that, they can usually get an offset for one suite, for the rental income from one suite, but they can't get the rental offset for two suites.
Right.
But I think with these new rules, I would see that could be expanding, and the ideal scenario could be, someone who has the basement suite and a laneway home, or a 2-unit laneway home, right? That where you get into a 3-suite situation, and probably what I'm envisioning is a 3-suite situation where the 2 rental suites combined, the square footage combined, is less than the square footage of the primary residence. And now we're starting to, set ourselves up for a position where we're not losing our principal residence exemption, because the primary purpose of that place is for you to live in, and the square footage is more. And also, we want to make sure that we're not writing off more than 49% of the expenses related to that property too, right?
Right.
And the other one people get lost in is, do not claim amortization. You're not going to claim any depreciation on it. Once you start claiming depreciation, it is like you're losing your principal residence deduction. So people are going to need some real. I'm simplifying a lot of tax information here into a few minutes, but people need some really specific guidance on this issue, because it's an area that could dramatically increase your wealth, and it's an area that can dramatically bring you to zero, because the other part of it, even beyond the tax part, is, you got the 28-year-old new homeowner, and all of a sudden, overnight, they become a property owner, a property developer, and a landlord all at once. What could possibly go wrong on undertaking $1 million project with zero experience, right? Like, what could possibly go wrong? So, Trevor and I know this because we both work in construction for many years. So we're kind of, in one respect, like we're very excited about this opportunity, because we know our clients with like good guidance. It's like it provides a lot of opportunities for them to build wealth. But at the other point, it's like, I know some people are going to mess this up really bad.
Oh yeah. And okay, so they've loosened the mortgage rules, and funny enough, all of the major municipalities, at least most of the ones here in Alberta, have already loosened up their zoning rules for the majority of the cities, so it makes it easier for people to develop on their properties.
All over Canada.
All over
Vancouver, all over. They've been doing this.
However, I don't think that they have the structures in place or mechanisms in place for permitting, licensing, all of these things that will kind of foster this movement going forward. So it's still going to be limited by the capacity of the government to push forward permits, right?
True. Yeah, we were talking one just the other day. Remember, we were talking about that one the other day where the client's like, I got a space on my lot. There's no problem. I could put a skinny house. And now we're thinking, it's like, okay, we've done this transaction in the past, but we always subdivide, build 2 skinnies, and then we're in business. But we would never build a skinny house on the same property just because the financing didn't work. But now if we could get the financing for that project, we're not sure if we could actually get the permit for that project, because are they going to let us put a skinny right next to the existing house on the same titled lot? Like, I don't know. We've never tried it because, we've never had the reason, it's never been a financeable project that way, right?
So this could be another case of, the government putting out a program that will only really work for a very, very small portion of the population, right? Just like the dental benefit and just like these other things that they're putting out there is like, okay, you put it out there as it sounds like a great announcement. Yeah, so many people are going to get dental. When really it comes down to only a very, very small portion of people will actually qualify to get that benefit. I think this might turn out to be that type of a scenario.
I think you're going to get, if you look at most of those developed permits too, I actually think it might guide them to the right solution, because there is permitting options right now for a suite plus a laneway home. That that exists, right, in most municipalities, right?
Yeah.
So they already have the suite and the laneway home, but I think getting to the 4 units might be challenging anyways, because that would probably mean some sort of weird makeup on the lot or some sort of tear down and rebuild, which I would think the lenders are going to be hesitant. I think they know enough that they don't want the 28-year-old homeowner who, with their unionized government job for Alberta Health Services playing property developer. Like, maybe that's not a great idea, right? So, but I think they'll let them build the suite and the laneway home, because there's not as many things that can go wrong if you're hiring a qualified contractor. I say not as many things. There's still a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Still a
lot of things that can go wrong.
Yeah, still a lot that can go wrong. But comparatively speaking, compared to a full tear down and rebuild, like even just the time involved in that whole process, right? So it's going to be one of these. This is a major opportunity. This is a shocking update. Like, it really is a shocking update. And it's funny how they're saying that the announcement in September was the boldest announcement. It was like, it was kind of like just putting us on par with most of the rest of the world who has 30-year mortgages, right? Love them or hate them is like that. That's the standard in the Western world. So, but allowing people to get insured mortgages to basically develop small rental complexes on their primary residence is like shocking. It's a big update, right? And there's going to be a lot of opportunity in this and a lot of risk in this. A lot of risk, right? And it's just funny to me, like, when we talk about like risk and investments, and it's like, I might tell people a leverage strategy where, if I walk them through a leverage strategy where, we're taking out maybe 25% leverage on some boring dividend paying stocks. But, someone's going to go 19 or someone's going to go 10x leverage on being a small property developer. And somehow that's not a risky strategy. It's like, people need to understand. It's like, okay, are you going to be able to find tenants? Do you know that they don't always pay sometimes? And sometimes they wreck stuff too, right?
Sometimes they do.
Sometimes they wreck stuff too. So, like, just because the bank will give you the loan, how stable is that job that you have, right? Are you the next consultant at one of these consulting firms that's going to be replaced by AI or something like that? So, they have to understand that there's some major opportunity. This is a big risk-reward play, right? I like it because I know we're going to be able to help a bunch of clients make a bunch of money. I know some people are going to walk off a cliff. Like, looking long-term, it's a little scary because I know my kids are going to go try to buy a house one day, and they're going to say, here's your new 4-unit, $3.5 million starter home. It comes, equipped with 3 tenants. This one guy's on Aish, and the other guy is, you know what I mean? Right. It's going to be wild of what it's going to create. But like, that's not our goal here. It's like almost like I have to, at this point, I have to just look at the outcomes as almost comical. It's like, my goal is how do I help, myself, my clients build some wealth, right? Because the outcome for our kids is already set in stone. It's like, the purchasing power of their wages is going to be inflated away dramatically. So we better do what we can to set them up in a situation that's, that we can have the same.
And a couple of points, going back to municipalities and stuff. So let's say you can get the permit, okay? And they figure out a way to make it more efficient. We don't have the manpower to actually build these suites. We are low on manpower, at least highly skilled manpower. So there can be some shoddy stuff that's coming down the pipeline.
Yes, and there are not many developers who know how to do legal suites well.
Exactly.
Because there's just not a lot of them out there, right? Like, we have been, working with our contractors for a while and telling us, like, you need to get into this business. This is where, you need to skate to where the puck is going. And it's like, they are going to, in some way, shape, or form. I've been telling people for a year and a half, like, they set it in the, in the budget, right? That they're going to come out with something. And this isn't, the adults made this decision. I don't think the people that we're hearing from the podium made this decision. The adults made the decision because there's something key about this decision. Is effective January 15th, 2025. And so we've been living in this clown world for the last 2 or 3 years where the clowns get up to the podium and they make an announcement of, here's your new wage subsidy or rental subsidy or new government program. Yay, me. There you go. Praise Canada, right? And then they walk off the stage, and then our phones start ringing. We have to tell clients, it's like, there's actually no way to access this program right now. It doesn't exist. Like, I know they announced it, but it doesn't exist. Like, check back in a day, a week, a month, a couple of months, and maybe they'll have some way to access it. This one here is like, they pre-announced it.
They set a date.
This is a serious announcement. They know how big it is. They put January 15th, where the announcement's made October 8th. They're giving the lenders time. This is a real thing. Like, this is going to happen. When I see that, it's like, this decision was made at the adults table.
And this was pre-planned because
Yes.
that zoning thing happened, I think it was either early this year or late last year with the whole rezoning and opening up spots for development in all residential areas, basically in the whole city.
Yes.
Before in Edmonton, it was just mainly in the core where they had extra large lots and you could subdivide and put skinnies. But now it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere. So they knew ahead of time that this was going to be coming, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's that. Now, one thing I want to mention is you spoke earlier about it might be difficult for somebody else to purchase said property after it's all developed. You get a fourplex, right?
There's a variance, right? You have to be, it's good you pointed that out, Trevor. So there's the variance we were talking about is they're going to give you up to $2 million to develop. So this thing, you could have the tear-down lot that's already worth $500, and then you borrow another $2 million. Okay, this thing's worth $2.5 million, right? Or
because you're allowed to borrow up to 90%.
90%, right? Or it's even if it's worth 1.8 or something like that. Remember back to the boldest mortgage announcement rules from September, right?
They expanded out to 1.5.
Yeah, the buyer pool of insured mortgages, so people who are buying new houses or first-time buyers can only purchase, specifically the first-time buyers can only borrow 1.5. So they can only buy a house up to 1.5.
Well,
so
a high ratio mortgage.
High ratio mortgage, right? So that the minute you construct the monstrosity that's worth more than $1.5 million, you have to understand the asset that you have, that it's a difficult to move asset, right? And most people are, they're accustomed to, selling regular residential real estate, and it's hard enough to move. Sell a fourplex, right? Sell a piece of commercial property. That is a much different game, okay? And there's fewer buyers for that. So I'd also be very, very careful. The minute you get into that asset that's worth more than $1.5 million, your future buyer pool for that asset is dramatically smaller. So if I'm looking at this, it's like the safe zone we're going to be looking at for clients, putting aside the risk of construction and, do they have enough liquidity to, see some tough times through. It's like putting aside, I think the sweet spot is probably going to be the 3-uniters. Mm-hmm. And if we can get the 3-uniters under $1.5 million, under $1.5 million.
Yeah, 1.49999.
Yeah, I'd actually want a little bit of growth room too, because I don't want to. Because you see this when you look at listings. When you looked at listings, the old rules, it's like the listings would bump up against that $1 million,
and
right?
And
they would stop.
Yeah, because the buyer pool goes down so dramatically over that $1 million mark because you had to have 20%.
That's right.
Now it opens up that area for more buyers. I mean, I wish this would have come a little bit earlier because we sold some properties in BC that would have benefited from that for sure.
Yeah.
But I think one thing to remember is, like, if you're going down the road for this particular strategy, you got to be thinking, this is a property I'm going to be holding in my family forever.
100 years.
Right? So if you're planning on doing this and then trying to get out quickly, that's probably not going to work well for you.
Yep.
And if you keep it and you structure things right by getting good counsel, you're able to keep that thing in your family for generations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And even keeping it for for the 100-year strategy, so, the asset test, I tell people to pass it through. Like, you're going to buy something. Is this something you want in your family for 100 years? If so, it's probably a good asset purchase. This ounce of gold, I can have this in my family for 100 years. Not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Dividend paying stocks, I'm buying 100 years, right? The Bitcoin, 100 years, no problem. Okay, but even that 1.5 is like, remember the ability to refinance. You're hoping for some capital appreciation. The game is set up to move the money from the people who do the work to the people who can borrow money to invest smartly. Okay, so if I buy a property that's already maxed out on the 1.5 million, how long was it before they moved it from $1 million to $1.5 million?
Oh,
It was
years,
like,
decades. It was a long time.
Yeah, it was over a decade, I believe, right? I have to look back, right? Like, that's why I just hate when any rule, it's like the, class 10 automobile at $30,000. It's been $30,000 for as long as I've been on the planet. Like, it's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, so I mean,
cars cost way more.
Yeah, potentially what could happen is now that's opened up, now it's going to push housing prices up to that 1.5 mark.
Then they'll stick.
And then they'll stick. Right?
Exactly. So if I want a little appreciation, it's like I'm looking for something a little bit under, $1 million. That might guide me which market is maybe the best to do it in, right? If I'm at a market where those, 3 units are going to bring me right to the $1.5 million, or I have to go over the $1.5 million, it's like, I've got to think about that for a bit, right? Like, how is that thing going to appraise? Like, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying it's like you have to understand there's a risk, right? And I think you're going to see some pretty good appreciation from those houses, up to that $1.5 million level. So you get a nice project with 3 units for $1 million in a good area town, and good rental possibilities. It looks nice. I think you're going to get some pretty good appreciation, right? But if you stuck right at that $1.5 million, you might be surprised at how long it holds at that $1.5 million.
You could be stuck there for a while.
You could, right? So I think that's going to be a really important point.
And some of the other things to consider, I guess, if someone's going down this road is liquidity, like what do you have available there, and then also leverage. If you're bumping up to your max level of what you can borrow, you have no leverage room to invest in anything else. So that investment, that property is it for you. Like, you're not buying stocks, you're not buying gold, you're not buying Bitcoin, you're not doing anything else, but you're now a landlord for life. Like, until you have some room.
Yeah, and that's why at the boot camp we teach people the Smith maneuver, the Spurrell maneuver. Like, exactly, there's a difference between the two and why we do the difference. The Spurrell maneuver is more of a generational wealth type of thing. The Smith maneuver is more of a buy for your first name type of ordeal, right? But there is a way to extract equity from over time and use that to buy stocks, which you should, because you should be diversifying. Because I don't think having one paid off $4 million asset, is actually a great play. I actually think it's pretty risky, because at any point in time, province can come along and change the rental rules, and you get deadbeat tenants. The city can come along and jack up the property taxes. They can, you can get a bunch of marijuana shops moving in across the street. You know what I mean? Just devalue your property. You got a lot of concentrated risk in one area, right? And so the goal becomes to diversify across a couple of different asset classes, so you're not totally susceptible to one, right? And so it can be a means, but do I want to see one person go from one of these properties to 2 of these properties to 3 of these properties and have no other assets? No, right? And so, like, using these properties to extract some equity over time, it's like just because you can borrow at 90%, that doesn't mean I want to be there, right?
Right.
It's like, we're looking for get properties down to 65% loan to value or lower. We can get readvanceable products. We can use those readvanceable products to populate investment accounts. And long term, I want to get your debt to equity down lower than 1, right? And I want to get your current ratio up, right? I want people in a position where they can make their mortgage payments for 4 years off of their liquid investments. It's like, that's where it's like the ratios matter, right?
Yeah.
When you know the ratios, you stop caring about the aggregate amount. It's like, some people will be like, oh, it's $1 million in debt. It's like, okay, this guy got $2 million in liquid assets. I don't care about $1 million in debt. It's like, in fact, we don't have enough debt if you have $2 million in liquid assets. Like, we need some more debt. This is not an efficient capital scenario, right?
Right, yeah, because you don't want to use your cash, your liquid particularly to invest. You want to use the leveraged.
That's right. And some other guy's got $700,000 in debt, and he's got zero liquid assets. Like, that's incredibly risky. That's just an incredibly risky scenario,
and,
right?
I mean, if that's the case, then he's losing that liquidity by at least 8% per year, right? So you got 700,000 in cash or whatever, and that's all he's got.
Yeah.
And it's just sitting there doing nothing. He's losing that at a rate of 8% at least. So you got to invest it in something. And then if you can use somebody else's money, like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, shout out to you. You know, he's using other people's money to invest in stuff that's going to benefit you. So they get their interest back, and you get your more than enough interest back to pay the debts, service them, as well as grow some wealth.
Yeah. So I hope this is helpful for people. Like, keep an eye out for this. This is a major change. It's released for the 15th. They're releasing it in advance, so I would think that some lenders are going to jump on this, and they're going to be ready close to the 15th. I do think there's going to be some hiccups with the, some unforeseen things. It's probably not going to be the smoothest funding process that anyone's received, right? But it's going to be a major opportunity, and there's some major risks with it. And this is where the advice that you're getting really matters. So kind of the knowledge is power, because someone down, you're going to see someone on your block, and they're going to be building a big suite, and someone's going to be like, why the heck is Bob putting these suites up? I don't get it. It's like, yeah, he just got all this, he just borrowed a bunch of fake money, and he's got an income stream forever now, right?
Yeah.
And someone else is going to go through one of these projects, and they're going to hire the wrong contractor on the wrong terms and build the wrong structure at the wrong price point, and they're just going to lose their shirt, and you're going to see a for sale sign on that property within a year.
So opportunity there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So hope that's helpful. And hopefully we if you like if you like what we had here, hopefully you hit the subscribe button. We'll see you back next Friday.
All right. Take care.